We're in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Elissa James. She is the Vice President of People and Culture at the YMCA of Central Ohio. Elissa, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, that's a great question. So good afternoon. My name is Elissa James. My pronouns are she, her, hers. When I was growing up, so that was the question, right? What did I want to be when I grew up?
Yes.
I really had my heart set on being a famous actor or actress. I mean, all the way through college. That was even my major through college. I thought that was where the world was going to lead me. And then just by fate, I fell into work in the YMCA and I just have never left after 20 years. So just enjoying every day here.
I love it. And as the Vice President of People and Culture, it's in the title of our show, Company Culture, this dynamic thing. We know that it's changing all the time, especially as new team members are joining over the past few years. It's something that people are continually auditing and thinking about innovating in. What are qualitative and quantitative ways you think about really measuring company culture?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So when it comes to things that we're measuring, it's really about listening to our employees, figuring out ways that we can survey in that frequency, right? We do want to get away from the idea of just the once a year survey where we kind of have to brace ourselves for what that feels like and what small changes we can make. And looking at it as a continuous feedback cycle. How are we continuing to get that feedback and be able to make adjustments as needed? Are there satisfaction surveys? How are we onboarding team members? I mean, every piece of the employee experience, you can really dive into the effectiveness by just listening to the staff. Someone told me the other day about our new hire orientation process. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have not looked at that in a long time. So that is great feedback for us. Let's take a look at that, or even the application. I think we learn a lot in exit interviews too. It's unfortunate that we lose people as they go on to their next best, but they can teach us a lot about the organization and the culture that we're building here. In terms of qualitative information, I think of what those feedback cycles or opportunities look like just in the one-offs, right? How are we popping into our locations? Here at the Y, we have not only 13 membership branches, but we also have a really large housing and shelter footprint. We're in over 55 before and after school programs. We are reaching out into the community, into people's homes to do work for children and to keep people housed. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So how are we listening to our employees? Because their experiences vary so much. You have your frontline lifeguard, but you also have the social worker who's been in this field for 20 some years, right? All the way to Head Start, childcare. We have staff in diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is their employee experience and who are they telling it to? Not just in that once or twice survey, but in that day-to-day feedback to their supervisor. It's also how we prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, right? So what are those relationships happening and what are the processes that we can put in place that really impact your culture day to day? And that has been a huge focus for us too. Currently, our People and Culture Department, formerly known as Human Resources, actually reports up through our Senior Vice President of Equity and Inclusion. And I think that has been such a great model for us and one that I hope that others really adapt to as well.
Absolutely. I was actually a volunteer at my local YMCA as well, in childcare and after school programs, and it was one of the best memories and just an incredible way to be part of the community as well. And you mentioned kind of, the organization really putting an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think we've seen a lot of organizations do that over the past few years as well. And as individuals, as companies, I think we all have a role to play in this work to have that ownership mentality. From your perspective, what do you see the unique role of employers specifically in creating more equity in the world?
Yeah, I think that employers have such a great access to be able to change systems, policies, procedures that for many can become inequitable so fast, or that people are so accustomed to. And then that bleeds into their personal lives on a day-to-day basis as well, right? So we want to make sure we have our finger on the pulse of the experiences of our employees and figure out how to make it better each day. one of the things we've been tackling in the last year has really been about the hiring process. We've now implemented where there has to be 2 people in every interview, in the hopes that that reduces any bias that may be entering in the hiring process, that the staff have had bias training so that they know what that looks like, and that we're really looking to diversify our staff. When it comes to our standardizing of our procedures, even every interview question at this point is standardized to make sure that we are providing that same or equitable experience for everyone. Now, there might be some that are job specific, right? Because we know that a lifeguard is different than the social worker and so on. But for the most part, there's a lot of very similar questions, and they're behaviorally based. We also look at red flag behaviors, what that may look like. How do you know when someone has answered the question that might be a red flag for you, and bringing them onto the organization? And do they have a full understanding that we are committed to being an anti-racist organization and furthering our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion? So I think that employers hold the key to 2 benefits that are huge for employees right now, and making sure that we are not only providing benefits that are equitable to different employees, but that our salary plans are also providing equity. I mean, there are so many organizations now that do pay equity studies. We just did a huge one for ourselves as well, and making sure that all of our systems in place that we can walk away and feel, yes, we're feeling good about what we're doing. When I started in this role, I wasn't as familiar with these systems or how things had come to be. How did we figure out the know-how, problem solving, and accountability of every position? But now that we've gone through this process with all of our supervisors, they've pointed their own positions based on those criteria and placed them into those salary plans. So I think that that's been a huge step for us to not only ensuring equity, but ensuring that we have the trust of our employees.
Absolutely. And trust is intentionally built as well through the actions that you talked about too, through specific programs, and really ensuring that people feel seen, heard, and understood at the organization. I love that you started out with the candidate experience as well, and trying to mitigate bias there too, because it definitely starts at the beginning of someone's time at the organization. And we know that there are some studies that talk about kind of the importance and the adoption of radical flexibility in raising the number of employees, like high performance. It's as high as 40% when that is present in the role. What does radical flexibility look like at the YMCA?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time looking at this just because, well, and we're about to embark on open enrollment too for health benefits. And then as I was looking up radical flexibility, I mean, your mind just gets going. It used to be such a different environment for employees, right? Like they would come in and it would be like, here's our health benefits and here's where your office is and here's your desk. And I mean, when I first started, even at the Y 20 years ago, I was like, okay, yes, thank you. Like you kind of feel like that was what was expected at times. And I feel like the entire workplace has really shifted, and the Y has shifted as well. And it's such an exciting time to be a part of it. For us, it's really been about putting people first, humanizing the workplace, humanizing the meeting space, and when people work, and realizing that people come to the office or don't come to the office with different familial needs. Their relationships are in different places, or what they need to support their family. We have those that take care of older family members or have to get kids off the bus. And it's really about meeting people where they are and trusting them, right? So that radical flexibility really requires radical trust, and something that a lot of people hadn't been used to before, right? Can I trust you to be somewhere else as an employee and be just as effective? And I think during COVID, we've really learned that the answer is yes for a lot of staff. So engaging in a relationship, that relationship of trust not only empowers the employee to do their best work, but allows them the flexibility and ability to bend when needed, right? That they can make these shifts and that it's okay, whether it's the space they're working in, the hours that they're working, meetings. I feel like everything is on the table right now. But I also feel like, as a forward-facing organization, that isn't possible for every single employee, right? So we have locations where the lifeguard has to be at the pool, right? The program director has to put on the programs. So what does flexibility in their roles look like? We will never strive for sameness, but we will strive for equity to make sure that staff, it may not be the same benefit, but what's the equitable benefit for the role that they're serving?
Absolutely.
We've also created what's known to us as part-time plus. So it's not just a part-time status, and it's not a full-time. Maybe they're not ready to to be a full-time employee yet, but they're ready to commit a few more hours. You can still get health benefits and paid time off with what's considered part-time plus for us. And that's your 27 to 35 hours. That's still a pretty large commitment for someone. Well, it's not 40 or 45 or, whatever the average work week is for a lot of folks. It's still a huge commitment of their time away from their families and what they're looking at. So to make sure that we're meeting people where they are, we have a huge number of staff that go, like as their families grow. I've been with the Y 20 years. As your family changes, maybe what you can take on at the time changes, or you're looking for something different, or you're looking to grow and expand your role or learn more. And I feel like the Y's been there every step of the way.
Absolutely. I appreciate what you said around kind of creating that equity is not the same for everyone. People are bringing in different life experiences, different lived experiences, and a lot is going on. We wear many different hats inside and outside of work as well. And I think that's another change with the optics of work, which we talked about as well, for butts and seats, and also understanding what personalization looks like at scale. We know that in terms of the employee voice, a lot of folks are asking kind of how are organizations showing up for their full lives and personhood. 47% of employees reported that their stress was higher than anything they previously experienced in their career, and only 37% said that their organization really understood what they needed, both in their personal lives and for their families. How are you thinking about showing up fully for employees?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a constant question, right? I don't think we'll ever have like, oh, we've mastered it. Like this is where we've hit, we looked at our time off policies. That was one of the very first things that we did. And especially in light of COVID, we started giving every employee time off from the minute they started. And it used to be that you had to earn that over a certain period of time, right? You got so many personal days after this and vacation after this. But one of the ways we wanted to meet employees where they were, especially in light of a global pandemic, was to make sure that they had the time off that was needed. The other thing is also in recognizing the world that we're living in, we have what's called our hours of care program. And if someone doesn't have benefit time, but they need it for some reason, like you can donate time and you can ask to receive time. And so it's a nice way to support employees that maybe they don't have it or they would have gone unpaid. If tomorrow, some of our employees, let's say they had to be out for a surgery or a family member to assist for 3 weeks, and they didn't have enough benefit time or vacation time, other employees, we have a full bank, probably over 1,000 hours that have been donated, and they're just waiting for another employee that has a need to be identified. We match them up, and those hours of care go to make sure that no one isn't whole at the Y, right? So you should be able to get through some of those challenges of life that are sometimes the most difficult experiences of your life and not have to worry about your paycheck, right? So first and foremost, we're an organization that helps people reach their full potential. And that has to start with our employees. If we're not doing it for them, then they're not going to be able to do it for others. We also have just signed on with a mental health wellness app. And it used to be under our employee assistance program. You could get these, you could get 3 visits for each event that you wanted to kind of talk to someone about. But now this is unlimited visits with someone. This is unlimited support. It has a myriad of features where they'll look at your health benefits to see for you, like they'll look at it for you to see if maybe you should look at something else, or if there was a billing challenge, they'll dissect that for you. But I just love the idea when some of our staff have those challenging moments in their life, there's not a limit to the amount of assistance that they can need in those times, right? It's not, well, I hope that it's solved in those 3 visits. It's, log in and you'll be looking at a person and have that relationship just as you would as if you were in person. And you can talk to them as much or as little as you want. The ball is in your court. So just trying to consistently take a look at what the needs are and showing up for them whenever we recognize them and making those changes quickly and swiftly. That's the biggest thing. When we identify something and the answer is going to be yes, we don't need to wait until the next year. We just started giving people their birthday off or their day of birth. And we're not going to wait till January 1st. We're going to say, you know what, we're doing it right now. And those of you that have already had your birthday pass, you can just celebrate another day. Maybe it's your half birthday, maybe it's your dog's birthday, however you want to do it, you still have that day to use this year. But we didn't want to wait until January 1 to roll it out. Everybody's going to get it, even if you don't already, even if your birthday is already passed.
I love that as someone who loves their birthday as well. And also not waiting for kind of, when you can, arbitrary guidelines of like, this is when we are going to start it. If you have the opportunity to start now as well, this is feedback you're hearing too. And I think we've all seen that business as usual is out the window. So how are we really thinking about innovating and kind of creating these new systems? I know one of the other kind of pieces we wanted to dig into were those unique employee benefits. Can you tell me more about those that you've implemented at the YMCA of Central Ohio?
Yeah. So we have a team member who her entire position is about employee benefits and what we can change and offer. And, every day we're thinking like, oh, go find this business and see if they'll give us a membership, or how can we get discounted this, so she's exploring all of this for us, which is awesome. But this year we're implementing a couple different health plans. It used to be, like I said, you got here's our health plan. You can buy into it or you cannot. Now there's 2 different health plans and a high-low of each, and you can make these choices of what's best for you. I was recently listening to another podcast where they were talking about the generational needs for health benefits, right? That every generation approaches health benefits possibly a little bit different based on where they are in their life. And so employees' freedom goes into health benefits. It goes into everything that we do. Not everyone is going to need the highest level of vision insurance, but sometimes people want it, or they have a family that's what they need, and they're willing to invest a little bit more to have better health plan or better vision insurance. So we have high and low dental, high and low vision, and then 2 completely different full health plans, right? So you can either have a deductible plan or the PPO. So just making sure that people have those choices to do what's best for them and their family is huge. This year, we're also offering pet insurance. So that's going to be a big one. And so we're really excited about that too. It's at such an affordable price. I just can't believe we didn't jump on that earlier. I mentioned the day of birth off. So that one we're already doing. I'd say one of the other really big ones for us, and I've been here for quite some time, but is parental leave. And looking at, and initially as we get into this, is providing that 6 weeks paid regardless. And that is, any person in the family, whether or not it's a birth, adoption, however, whatever the nature is, we're going to be pretty flexible on that to make sure that when parental leave is needed, that there is an immediate 6 weeks that is paid for the employee. So it's not going to stop there, but those are just a few of the examples that we've hit upon so far.
Yeah, I think that is great. Expanding family forming benefits and rental leave is so important and something that we've been hearing as well. And I think those are great examples to show how you're fully showing up for folks as well, to our earlier kind of conversation. Are there any other kind of systems? We know folks are auditing the employee experience a lot as well that you've kind of redesigned or implemented to be more equitable, whether it's a process, policy, or initiative. I know you just shared some great examples that are benefit specific as well.
Yeah, I think our handbook is always going to be a work in progress too, right? It used to be that the handbook was every couple of years. Dress codes are a huge piece of that right now, right? And we have staff that are in business suits every day. We have staff that are hanging out in their swimsuits every day. I mean, the wildlife just really varies. And we're really enticed by that whole dress for your day piece. So I think that is probably our next big tackle, is the dress code, to make sure that, every position is going to be a little bit different in what it provides. And every position might have different needs. But I know for some, like even figuring out an outfit in the morning is a cause of stress, right? And that's what made working from home sometimes so appealing, is that removed that stressor. And so how can we make that so if an employee is coming in, that they still feel welcomed and comfortable and excited to be there? So I think the overall employee handbook and how we can support employees, I think that the view used to be on employee handbooks is that it was much more to support the organization. And making a full flip on that, the employee handbook should really be about supporting the employees. What can they expect from us as an organization and hold us accountable to? And what are those pieces that we can constantly push to say, this is what you can hold me accountable to? Kind of like in our abuse prevention efforts, we share with staff we share with participants our employee code of conduct. That's kind of like putting all of our cards on the table and saying, this is what you can expect of me. And I think our handbooks really need to be viewed the same way, and not just as a protection of the organization.
Absolutely. And it's a dynamic living document as well. You don't have to wait kind of for that annual review to look at policies and things like that as well. And I think that's another good example of that too, in terms of just like you can always be looking at it and see how you can support it continuous employees. Can you share another kind of example question around how employee feedback has really inspired a change in a policy or initiative as well?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that we've done in the last 2 years is really put a focus on our employee resource groups. And so that piece has been just developed so much. And I really owe that to our Senior Vice President of Equity and Inclusion. When he came on, I mean, he hit the ground running in terms of making sure that not only are employee resource groups known, but that we're investing in them as well, and that they have the resources that they need to be successful. As a part of that also, we have what we have formed as our Anti-Racism Council. And that's a council, and it started, it was probably mid to late 2020. And they're looking at various policies, procedures, ensuring that we're living our pledge to be an anti-racist organization and that we keep diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront of everything that we do. And anytime that there is, a policy that might stray or it negatively impacts a certain group of our team members in a certain way, like we need to have that conversation and figure out how to make that stop, right? And it really just takes someone or some group of people to tell us that it's happening, And so having those truth tellers and having those folks that are really focused, I mean, we meet every other week. And our CEO is a proud participant of our Anti-Racism Council and participatory in every meeting. So we just want to make sure that we're providing those systems. And if something else is recognized, I mean, we've started including language in all of our job descriptions. Performance evaluations are next, putting all of these things in there so that our systems and policies and procedures reflect who we are and our mission to serve the community.
Every point of the employee experience, from reviews to the job description, and that's really important. Plus one to just your CEO's involvement and support of being a really anti-racist organization, and also investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the company. We talked about earlier kind of the shift in language from human resources to people and culture. There's been a lot of innovation in the space as well. And there has been an old school perspective of, HR is the principal's office. We previously had a webinar around this as well, in terms of folks being a little hesitant, and the changing of language, I think is an interesting point of, okay, we are here for the employee and the organization too as well. What do you think the current perception of human resources, people, culture teams are, and where do you want the perception to be aspirationally in the future?
Yeah, I think it's ever changing, which is so good. I know when I first started in my professional career in the very beginning, I mean, it was like, it felt like going to the principal's office, even if they were as nice as can be, right? You still felt like there was something punitive around it, or that maybe it wasn't a partner in the work that I was doing. It was considered more a regulatory body and, something that just kind of existed. And that's one of the reasons that we changed our name here in Central Ohio. So it is no longer human resources. Everything you see for us is people and culture. We really strive to be a business partner for all of our employees. Like we're along with you on all of this to make sure that your experience from the time that you're hired, onboarded, I mean, I guess even the time that you're interviewing, that it is reflective of who we are as an organization and that we're there for you. When things changed during COVID and we had to reduce our workforce, our people and culture team stayed pretty consistent. And that was because the services that we were offering and the support to our employees there was never a greater need to do that. And so making sure that we're having that support of our employees and being seen as culture builders and not just human resources. And it provides that creative space for us to work together in all of the things that we're doing. So yes, I see it furthering into that arena, especially as this workforce is changing. We have to be a good partner, or quite honestly, we'll get left behind. And somebody else will, right? Like we want people to love to come to work, especially if we're an agency where people love to come to the Y and it's their safe space. It starts with those employees.
Absolutely. The employees are the ones that are working with the community, the people on a day-to-day basis as well. And I think you're right. I think that partner word too, it's just a mutual partnership or relationship. And again, going back to trust and really active listening and having those hard conversations, having great conversations as well is really important. We are almost in June 2022, and I would like to ask how the YMCA of Central Ohio is honoring and celebrating Pride this year, recognizing that I'm sure this is something that you're doing and supporting LGBTQIA+ employees 365 days a year.
Yeah. So one of the things that we have in a lot of our buildings is our diversity. We have diversity boards that celebrate different things that are happening that month. So I'm quite positive as we get into June that all of our diversity boards are going to change so that everyone knows kind of that we are celebrating Pride Month. And we're continuing to have those conversations around what that means for us in our local activities. There is so much going on in Columbus in the month of June. I do know that we're committed to the Pride Parade every year, and we have a float. I think that sometimes there's a misconception about the Y and our support of our communities. And so making sure that that is clear that we are an ally, supporter, and a safe space for people to come, I think is an important piece of who we are as an organization. So we're committed to participating in local activities. Our national office always issues like a huge push for support of Pride Month. And so we'll see staff in t-shirts, celebrating on their social media pages and making sure that our communities know that we're a safe place to be. So as we explore those, I'm excited to see what comes, especially from our employee resource groups. I mean, they're really going to be the ones leading this charge. And that's my favorite part about it, is it's not necessarily us saying what we are going to do. It's our employees saying, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, a combined grassroots effort from employees, from employee resource groups, and also support from the national organization, also participating in local events, I think is important as well. Elissa, is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscoring a couple of key takeaways from our conversation today?
I don't think so. I think the biggest thing for us is, I love learning from other people of what's happening in the benefits world and what's happening for employees and employee culture. And I just love that you guys are having the conversation and continuing the conversation with those around the country, because this is how we get better, right? This is how we serve those. And it's such an exciting time to be a part of the workforce as we really humanize people in culture. I won't say human resources, but people in culture.
Yes, absolutely. Elissa, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. And as a reminder, folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the company to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.